Hey, and welcome back to another video. And in this video, we're going to have a look at how we can add a launch screen in SwiftUI and also how we can build our own custom launch screen with animations and transitions. So what we're doing is building a Twitter launch screen and also building the custom launch animation on Twitter. So in SwiftUI, when you actually launch your apps, you're able to add a launch screen. So what a launch screen is the first screen that a user sees when they open up the app, and it's used to basically give them an impact of your app's identity. So in order to do this, we need to update our plist in our project with some values from our assets. And the first thing we need to do is actually set our color, which will be used in our launch screen as well. So let's do that now. So if you want to learn more about colors, then check out my video managing colors in Xcode. So let's create a new color asset called launch screen background. So you just go into Xcode and then go to assets. So what we're going to do is just create a new color asset. I'm just going to call this launch screen background. So launch dash screen background, like so. Okay, cool. So what we want to do is we want to use the Twitter brand color for our colors here. So in order to do that, if you just go to Google and you just search for Twitter brand color, and if you just find a link that has the hex codes, so we're just going to use this website here. And what we want is we actually want the hex color for the Twitter blue. So let's copy this hex color. And then Xcode for any appearance. We're just going to go and open up our right hand panel, show color panel. And then for our hex code, just enter that. Okay, cool. And then for our dark mode, what we're going to do is just copy the dark gray that you see here. So let's do that. And then for our dark mode, we're just going to do the same thing again. Okay, sweet, cool. So now we've done that. Cool. So now we actually need to add in the logo that you see on the Twitter app, so Twitter's logo. So in order to get that, what we can do is if you just Google Twitter logo, you should see the brand guidelines like so. So if you actually just download the brand guidelines toolkit, so download guide. Oh, wrong one. So if you actually just scroll down, you should see an option called Twitter logo, and you can actually download this, and it should download it onto your machine. And just unzip this, and then open it up. You should see that we have a folder called Twitter logo, which has all the different colors. Now the one that we want is we actually want the white Twitter logo. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to check out the size of this. So if I just go to get info, you'll see that it's actually quite big, this. So what we want to do is actually reduce the size of this logo. So what we actually want to do is actually reduce the size of this logo to probably around 100 pixels in width, and we'll see what that gives us for the height. So in order to do that, if you just double click on this logo here now, and then if you just go to tools, you should see an option called adjust size. And then what you want to do is make sure that you have the option to fit into, and then make sure you have pixels selected on the right hand side here. And then what we want to do is just on the width, we want to enter 100 like so. And then let's see what this looks like. So cool. So that looks okay to me. So now we want our logo to look like that. So now what we're going to do is actually import this into Xcode. So if you just go to Xcode and you just hit the little plus button at the bottom here, you could also drag this in if you want to, but I'm just going to do it like this. So if you hit import, and if you just go to downloads, and if we just find that logo, it was in PNG, and we just want this white one here. Cool. So now what we're going to do is actually rename this to logo like so. Cool. Now when you're working with assets, you actually want to learn more about how to manage images in SwiftUI, then funnily enough, I have a video called Images in SwiftUI and Xcode. But you can see here with this logo, normally when you're working with assets, you don't want to have just one size because of Retina devices about how it scales the asset. So if you only have one size of the asset, you kind of want to work with like SVGs or PDFs. But if you're working with PNGs like we are in our case, we actually want to have the asset in 1x, 2x, and 3x. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create this logo in 1x, 2x, and 3x as well. So let's just do that now. So if I actually just go back to this here, and if I actually just delete this folder, now I'm just going to unzip it. And then I'm just going to go to Twitter logo again. And then this time I'm just going to duplicate this. So I'm just going to call this logo. And then I'm going to just duplicate it. And then we're going to call this logo at 2x. And then logo at 3x. Okay, cool. So now I want this to be 100. So I want this to be 100 width. And if this is 2x, I'd want this to be 200. And then if this is 3x, I'd want it to be 300. So let's just do this one by one. So I'm just going to change the size of this to be 100 width like it was before, which is cool. Okay, sweet. And then we want this to be 200 because we want it to be twice the size of our image. So it's going to adjust the size to be 200 in width. Okay, cool. And then finally, we want our third one to be 300 in width because we want it to be 300 the size. Okay, cool. Sweet. Okay, cool. So now what I'm just going to do is I'm going to again just delete this that I just added in. And then we're just going to import those three that we just created so we can fill up all the slots. Okay, cool, sweet. So now we have our logo in 1x, 2x, and 3x, so that's all good. Okay, cool. So now that we have our color and our logo in, we actually need to edit our project's info.plist. So what is a info.plist? Well, an info.plist is actually the configuration of your apps, and you can actually define settings within this to, you know, turn certain features on. So you can actually define whether your app supports iPhone or iPad or Mac only and whatnot, and that's what your info.plist is. It's literally the information about your application. So in order to access this info.plist in Xcode, what you want to do is select the Xcode project here, and then you should see a tab across from general called info. So this is your info plist target properties here. So what we want to do is we want to actually customize this launch screen one here. So if you just open up launch screen, you want to remove this UI launch screen because we don't want to handle a UI kit launch screen with a storyboard. We want to do this in SwiftUI. So let's remove this by hitting the minus option. And then within the launch screen, we're just going to hit the plus option to add a key. So when you're working with plist, the way it normally works is you have a key value pair. So this is the key that we want to edit. So these are the options that we can change within our key for our launch screen, and then we have to give it a value. So the first key that we're going to give it is a background color. So this is the background color of your launch screen. So what we want to do in our value is actually specify the name of the color from our assets. So we're just going to copy this launch screen background, and it needs to be spelled the exact same way. I'm just going to paste that into our value like so. Now finally, another option that we have is image name, and this is the image that we want to show on our launch screen. So Xcode will automatically put this image in the middle of your app's UI screen. So the image that we want to specify here is logo. So there's one final option that I want to add in, and that is the image respects the safe area insets. So what this means is that for whatever reason, if we somehow accidentally added in a logo that was too big, what this will do is it will prevent the image from exceeding the safe area layouts. And if you want to learn more about safe areas, I actually have a video called Safe Areas in SwiftUI. So we want to set this to yes. Cool. So now we've easily set up our launch screen by just literally filling out the information on our info.plist. Now in order to see this in action, you can't do this on the SwiftUI preview. You need to run this on the simulator. So let's do that now. So if we just open up the simulator and just hit run, so we should see the simulator appear. And now when our app launches, you can see that you can see the Twitter logo there. So now we've added in our launch screen. But if you're someone who uses the Twitter app, you'll notice that when you actually open up the application, the app almost makes some like API calls to request some data, and you have like a screen that has like the Twitter logo, scaling in and out and then coming out to you when everything has finished. So what we're going to do is actually recreate that launch screen animation in SwiftUI. So I've actually got a Lottie file here, and I just want to show you what it looks like. So you can see here how it works. So we get this animation like so. Cool. So what we're going to do is actually recreate this bit of the animation like so. So let's actually just do that now. So the first stage of the animation, if we just pause it, is that we actually just get the Twitter logo on the screen with the blue background. So let's actually create a new SwiftUI view, and we'll call it launch screen view. So let's go into our Xcode project and just create this now. So in here, what we're going to do is actually add in our brand color asset. So we're going to add in our background color and our Twitter logo onto the screen. So I'm just going to type this out and then break it down. Okay, cool. So as you can see here, we now have our Twitter logo on the screen, and we have our background, and we also have our image. And you can see here that the background color is actually exceeding the safe area because we've told it to ignore the entire safe area. So it's now covering the whole screen. So like we saw in our Lottie file before, that the Twitter view actually scales and increases a few times until the app has finished, performing some kind of network request. So what we want to do is we actually want to repeat this and actually create our own repeating scale effect in SwiftUI. If you want to learn more about how to do animations like this, then check out my video, Animations in SwiftUI. So at this moment, SwiftUI doesn't allow you to chain animations. So we're actually going to need to handle this ourselves by using the dispatch queue and main dispatch queue to handle these animations. So to help us actually, handle building these animations, we're also going to split them up into phases. So let's create the first phase, which is what I just spoke about, which is the scaling effect. So I'm going to create a source of truth for the first phase. So let's do that now. Okay, cool. So this is the first phase, source of truth, which is going to control our scaling effect that you see within the Lottie file. So that scaling effect. Okay, cool. So now that we've done that, we actually now want to actually animate this in and out based on this phase. So what we're going to do is actually have some kind of timer that is continuously running every interval to modify the scale of this view. And we can actually accomplish this by using Combine. And if you want to learn more about Combine, then check out my video getting started with Combine, which goes through everything you need to know in Combine. So let's create our timer and attach it. Let's first of all just create our timer and then we'll break it down. So what we have here is our timer, and this timer, what's going to happen is when we actually connect this to our view, it's going to trigger our view every single 0.65 seconds. So now what we need to do is actually attach this timer onto our Z stack so that every 6.5 seconds we're changing the scale of this Twitter view. So let's do that now. So what we're saying on our Z stack is we're going to use the onReceive modifier, which takes in a publisher. And what this onReceive is going to do is that whenever it receives a new value from our timer, so that new timer being the, the new interval, so every single 0.65 seconds, is going to trigger this code within here. So what we're saying is that with our first phase, every single 0.65 seconds, we're going to toggle whether our first phase is animating or not. So this is what we're going to use to actually scale our image view up and down. So what we're going to do now is actually add in that logic to actually scale our image up and down. So let's do that now. So what we're saying here is on our image, the scale effect is, so if it is animating, so if this toggles this to true, then what's going to happen is that this is going to scale down to 0.6, and when this hits another interval, then we're going to change this to false, then we're going to scale it back up to 1. So basically every single 0.5 seconds we're going to change between 0.6 and 1 every single time. But what we want to do is we want to actually treat this as a launch screen that actually covers our whole app. So you need to actually use this launch screen view within our main app. So what we're going to do is on our test project in our main app window group here, we're actually going to use a Z stack and actually embed our launch screen on top of the content view. So let's do that now. Let's embed it in a Z stack, and then below the content view, we're going to say launch screen view, because if you remember with Z-Stacks, the priority is based on the order of the view. So this view is going to cover this content view. Now let's actually run this and see what happens if we run this on the simulator. Okay, cool. So now you can see that with our image logo, it's actually performing the animation every second because of our timer. Now, for the rest of this tutorial, I'm actually going to disable the canvas in SwiftUI because we're going to need to use the simulator to preview everything that we want. So now we've done the first phase. So the next phase we need to handle is actually scaling our Twitter animation view out so it stops and then it goes all the way out. But before we do that, we actually need our launch screen to actually track what phase it's in, because right now it currently only knows about the first phase. There's actually 2 more phases that it needs to know about, and that's when we're in the second phase. So when we scale it out and complete it, which is when we want to actually remove this view off the screen and it doesn't need to be there no more. So what we actually need is some kind of source of truth for handling state changes with our launch screen animations. We're going to use an enum, the observable object protocol, and also the publish property wrapper. And if you want to learn more about this, then check out my video, observable object and publish in SwiftUI. So first of all, let's create a launch screen manager. So now we have our enum with each screen phase. So we have one for our first stage, which is what you're seeing now. And we also have another stage, second, which is what we're going to work on, and completed, which is our final stage as well. So what we need to do is build our source of truth that's going to, manage these phases. So I'm just going to type this out, and then again, as usual, break it down. So we have our class here, launch screen manager, which is of type observable object. And we've also got a published property that we're going to listen to. Now I've marked this as private set because I don't want any other view to be able to modify this value. I only want them to be able to read the state. And by default, we've set the launch screen phase to be first, so the first stage. And we also have a function here, which is what we're going to use later to actually help us remove our launch screen off the screen. So now, because we've got this launch screen phase, this is going to be our root source of truth for managing our launch screen. And what we're going to do is instantiate and use this within the root of our application. So let's go into our test app projects main file. And at the top here, we're going to use the state object to create a source of truth for this launch screen manager. So now that we've done this, we actually want both of our views to be able to read from this source of truth, because we also want to change the launch screen's current state. So in order to actually do this, we need to inject this into both of these views, and we're going to do that by using the environment object property wrapper, since we want them to read and write to this source of truth. So if you actually want to learn more about the environment object as well, then I actually also have another video called environment object in SwiftUI as well. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is use our Z stack as the parent that we inject our source of truth into both of these views. So on the Z stack, if you just type out environment object, and then you want to just pass in your launch screen manager like so. So like I said before, we actually want to simulate an API call finishing. Now I'm not actually going to add an actual API request in this project file, but we just want to simply just simulate it. And we want to simulate the call finishing and our screen, launch screen, now exiting the view. So we want to actually wrap our launch screen in a condition so that when our API call finishes, so when the state of our launch screen manager is changed, we actually remove this off the screen. So let's actually wrap this in a condition that checks to see if the state is not equal to completed, then you can stay on the screen. So let's do that now. So what we're actually saying here now with our launch screen manager state is that if the state is not equal to completed, then all we want you to do is keep it on the screen. But once this does equal completed, then this will no longer be visible on the screen. And now we need to update our content view to use this fake API call. So when that text view appears on the screen, we're going to add a 5-second delay that will then call our function to dismiss the launch screen. So let's do that now. So in order to do that, the first thing we need to do is on our content view, we actually need to add in the @environment property wrapper. So let's go into our content view. Now, when you're adding in the environment object property wrapper, you always want to make sure that before you do anything else, you also inject it onto your preview to prevent any crashes. So let's do that now. Cool. So now we've done that. So now what we're going to do in here is that when our text appears, we're going to add in that delay to remove and call dismiss. So I'm going to type this out and then break it down. So what we're saying is that when our text appears on the screen, we're going to use the dispatch queue main, and after 5 seconds from now, we're now going to call the dismiss function. Now, as of right now, this dismiss function doesn't do anything, but we'll tackle this next. So let's actually add in the logic to handle this. So we go into our dismiss function. Within here, what we're going to say is that when someone calls dismiss, we want to change the state to be the second phase, which is the scale out animation. Cool. And then once it scales out, what we finally want to do is we want to call the completed on our state. So we're going to add a 1-second delay to then remove our view off the screen. So let's do that now. Cool. So now after a second, when we change our state, we're now going to set it to be completed. So this dismiss function just handles purely removing the launch screen off the screen. So before we actually run this and test this out on our simulator, we still need to actually handle that actual scale out animation on our launch screen view and use our environment object on it as well, because we haven't done that. So let's actually go back to our main app. Let's go to our test project app, and this time let's go into our launch screen view. And then the first thing we're going to do is add in the environment object property wrapper. Now, like I said before we even use anything of this, we need to use this on our preview. So let's add it onto our preview as well. Perfect. So now we're ready to go. So we need another source of truth for actually scaling our animation out. And this is almost like a mask effect within our app. So let's add in another state property, and this will be for our second phase. Cool. So now we actually have to update our timer logic, and what we want to do here, depending on our launch screen state, we actually want to change what source of truth here we want to be animating. So if we're in the first stage, then we actually want to toggle this first phase animation, but if we're in the second phase, we actually don't want to toggle this anymore. We now want to toggle this one to start off the second phase animation. So I'm going to add in some code and then we'll break it down. So what we're saying is that depending on the state, so if it's the first state, then we're going to use our same animation that you're seeing here, which is a scale effect. But if we get to the second phase, instead of us using the first phase, we're now going to use a ease in and out animation, which is actually going to make our view expand out and give us that mask effect. So we're going to toggle our second phase. Now we've not actually used this second phase on our view to actually perform any kind of animation. So what we need to do is just scroll all the way down to our image logo view, and then this time what we're going to do is actually change the scale effect based on if the second phase is animating. So I'm going to just type it out again as usual, and then we'll break it down. So we've done a similar kind of thing here, but this time our scale effect is going to change only when the second phase is animating. So we've said here that if the second phase is animating true, then we want to use the screen bound divided by 4. Now you may be wondering, where did Tundi get this number from? So what I'm basically doing here is I'm figuring out the screen size, and remember with the Retina devices, everything is ×2. So I'm actually getting the height of the screen and dividing it by 2 to use that as a way to scale out the animation and, you know, give you that effect. And then if this isn't animating, then we're going to set it to 1, because I don't want to set a hard-coded value in here, because if I was to use that hard-coded value on a phone like an iPhone 8 or a smaller device, then it may not look the exact same. This ensures that no matter what the height is of the screen that you're working with, it will always expand out and give you the animation effect. Right, cool. So now let's see all of this together in SwiftUI. So if you actually just run this on the simulator again, you should see that it scales it in and out. And then as it gets towards the end, on 5 seconds, it now scales it out and we now get our word. So just to prove that you can actually, still interact with the screen, and it has definitely removed that, on our content view, we're just going to simply add a button above our text. So let's just put this in a VStack. Okay, it's not giving me an option to do that. So let's just add this within a VStack like so. And we're just going to add a button. And then the type is going to be tap me. And then we're just going to print to the console a message saying I've been tapped or something. Right, cool. So now if we just run this again, and you can see that we get our animation as usual. And it should now, after 5 seconds, scale out. And we now get the tap me. And then now, if you just tap on this, you should see that we're able to say, hey, I've been tapped. So it looks all sweet. All right, cool. So now we've done that. But one more thing I just want to do before we wrap up is I just want to review this bit. So if we actually just look at our animation, now you'll see that when it expands out, you'll notice that it's almost like a hard, like white and then the screen. What I want to do is I actually want to make the transition from when it scales out towards fade into this screen. So in order for us to do that, what we want to do is that when our second phase is animating, we actually want to change the opacity of our Z-stack because we want the whole screen to almost fade out. So what we're going to do is add the opacity modifier. And then on this opacity modifier, we're going to say if the second phase is animating, so if the second phase has been changed to true, and it's now true, then we want the opacity of this screen to be 0, or else we want it to be visible, which is 1. So let's actually run this and see what happens. And now you'll see that when we get this animation, it does the scaling, and then it will grow out to us. But now we have that nice fade effect. It's not as like harsh on our eyes anymore. So if you enjoyed that, I really appreciate hearing your feedback in the comment section below. Also as well, if you haven't already, I really appreciate if you gave this video a thumbs up, as well as subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell to get updates whenever I release a new video. That's everything from me. I'll catch you on a bit. Deuces.